Hi, I'm Pastor Steve Talmage from Love of Christ Lutheran Church in Mesa, Arizona. And each week, Pastor Nanette Christofferson and I provide a brief introduction to two of the upcoming assigned Bible readings for Sunday. In this video, we're going to take a look at the gospel reading of John chapter 12, verses 1 to 8. It's assigned for Sunday, April 3rd, 2022. I encourage you to read chapter 11 to help lead into our reading for today. I attribute a lot of the information I'm going to share to some wonderful background notes from ELCA pastor Brian Stoffergan, who over the years has put together lots of a collection of notes on the various lectionary Bible readings, and very helpful as he's reviewed lots of commentaries and provided some good research. The anointing of Jesus occurs in all four Gospels. However, the differences in these stories suggest at least two different sources, and their placements within the narrative indicate some editorial freedom. So if you lined up all four Gospels, you'd see anointing stories, but they're not all in the same linear lineup. They place them differently, and they have their unique flavors to them. We have an incident in Galilee at the house of a Pharisee. A penitent sinner enters and weeps in Jesus' presence. Her tears fall on his feet, and she hastily wipes them away with her hair. The scandalous action of loosening the hair in public fits the character of the woman and helps to explain why the Pharisee is so upset in her behavior. This is the backbone of Luke's narrative. An incident at Bethany, at the house of Simon the leper, where a woman, as an expression of her love for Jesus, uses her expensive perfume to anoint Jesus' head. Mark and Matthew closely followed this account. Well, with John, we're still in Bethany, but we're in a different house, and we have expensive perfume, and we have feet being anointed. So, John uses the second account, but incorporates details from the first account and adds some of his own, such as the presence of Lazarus, Martha, and Mary, and the comments about Judas. It is likely that John intends this narrative to be connected to the raising of Lazarus, which is reported in the previous chapter. In fact, the events of our text are briefly described in 11:2 before they happen. Our text is sandwiched between statements about killing Jesus and killing Lazarus. Only John has the anointing immediately preceding Jesus' entrance into Jerusalem, where Jesus is hailed as King of Israel. This suggests that one interpretation of our anointing story in John is that Mary is anointing a king, Jesus as King of Kings, the Messiah. Although kings were anointed on their heads, not their feet. Foot washing. Generally, one washed one's own feet and used oil to moisturize. Again, the climate, the context of much of Jesus' public ministry is the world you and I live in. It's arid, it's dry, and as we all see and know, our skin dries out with some form of moisturization. And also from a hygiene standpoint, when you're walking around with open-toed sandals, when you come into somebody's house, the custom was always to wash the dust off of your feet, and then if there was oil available, put some oil on it to just keep them moist. If the household had a slave would wash the feet of the guests. Mary's action was identification to her devotion to Jesus and gratitude for his raising her brother from the dead. Loosening hair was an act of self-effacement and submission in Jesus' culture. In Mary, John is trying to portray an example for the disciples and for us as readers of his gospel to see this posture of devotion, of humility, of submission, of gratitude. All of that is tied into this story. All right, let's get into the text. Verse 1, it's 6 days before Passover, so Jesus and the disciples, even though it's going to be dangerous, intend to observe the Passover in Jerusalem like any devout Jew would who was within 25 miles of Jerusalem. That was a religious obligation. Bethany is probably probably 2 to 3 miles away from Jerusalem. But there is mounting pressure, as we read in John 11, and after this reading, the religious leadership to silence this Jesus movement and really work to find ways to exterminate him, kill him. The setting is the home of Lazarus, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Verse 2, it is not just Lazarus, but his sisters, Martha and Mary, are giving this dinner for Jesus and the disciples. And this would have been a sign of hospitality in the Middle East. You often would open your courtyard to people and your home to feed them in some way. In this case, they have great reason, because in chapter 11, Lazarus was dead and now he's alive, and let us show thanksgiving. And one of the ways we often show thanksgiving is by providing a meal. Martha served may be an indication that there were no servants in the home, or Martha is modeling her way of showing devotion and thanks to Jesus, because maybe she was the better cook of the two. Maybe she wanted to provide something special for Jesus and his disciples. The low table allowed the men, because it would be all men who ate first at the table, allowed them to lay alongside as they ate with one hand, and it would provide clear access for Mary to reach Jesus' feet without having to move people around or have Jesus even move. Verse 3, we hear it's a pound of perfume. Again, we don't know the economic status of this household, so it is possible the notation of cost by John is indicative of the extravagance of Mary. It may have been a sacrificial offering. Mary may have scraped and saved for a long time to be able to purchase this for a special occasion, and the special occasion is now. Wiping away does not make sense because it's perfume, unless John is linking this to what Jesus will do with the towel when he washed and wipes the feet of the disciples in the upper room. We hear that the fragrance fills the room, the whole house, and it's possibly a contrast of the transition from the death and the stink of death from Lazarus' tomb to the aroma of God's ability to overcome death through Jesus. Verses 4-5, Mary models generous and costly discipleship. Judas models self-interest and greed. Mary anoints Jesus. Judas betrays Jesus. 300 denarii is a yearly wage of a day laborer. So this is a costly gift, a sacrificial gift. Verses 5-6, we have Judas talking and complaining about the money. The perfume could have been sold and money given to the poor. And the following commentary will show this is false piety on behalf of Judas. He's just playing games with the group. It appears the disciples had a common purse or treasury, which more than likely they would donate their resources, and those supporting the movement and mission of Jesus would donate. And out of that, they would give alms, free will offerings to the poor, as well as their regular offerings as practicing Jews. For unknown reasons, Judas was made treasurer, and John provides commentary about his sticky fingers. Verse 7, Jesus silences Judas and affirms Mary's action. The significance of Mary's action is that she is preparing Jesus for what awaits him in Jerusalem. He knows what lies ahead. And probably the disciples have a little bit of a sense too, given the threats that have been flying around. Jerusalem means Jesus' death and burial. Mary's action is preparing for that. Mary's providing a prophetic role in the drama of transition to the concluding week of Jesus' life before his death on a cross and resurrection from the tomb. Mary mirrors to us the outward devotion of disciples, while Judas is preoccupied with self-interest. Verse 8 has been misused by a variety of ways to justify not really caring about the poor. But it's rooted in Deuteronomy 15, verse 11. Since there will never cease to be some in need on earth, I therefore command you, open your hand to the poor and needy neighbor in your land. So if we're going to be true to the biblical text, the comment is yes, there will never cease to be some in need on earth. But then you hear very clearly a command to care for the poor and needy neighbor in your land. So Jesus is not saying we just stop caring about the poor because he's more important. Scholar Yocham Yeremias thinks the story of the anointing is comprehensible only on the basis of the Palestinian distinction between almsgiving and acts of charity. A gift of money to the poor would be almsgiving, and that is just kind of like reaching in your pocket. Here's $5. The burial of the dead would be a special act of charity considered higher and more valuable. So when Jesus does die, the fact that Joseph of Arimathea provides a tomb, that is a special act of charity and a great value, because this burying of the dead then and now is still expensive. This little verse also, an explanation we're trying to provide, helps us address the competing uses for how, to whom, and where we give. Because the demands come every day in the mail, email, in person, and so we have to wrestle individually and together. Where will it do the most good? And that's a helpful question. Where will it do the most good? And do I believe in where I'm offering these gifts will have an impact and make a difference? As you read through this lesson, we're getting closer to the end of Lent. We're just a couple of weeks away from Holy Week. And well, in fact, we're one Sunday away from Palm Passion Sunday and then Holy Week. So we're getting close. And Mary's action, her example, her attitude, her gift are all signs of how to prepare, how to give toward Jesus during this time of waiting for what's next in his life, his death, and his resurrection. God bless you. Take care.